My name is Krista Otsu, and I will be talking about the effects of media violence on children and teenagers. Today, more than ever, media is much more easily accessed by children and teens. This makes many wonder how violence in the media affects our youth and what can be done to ensure they know the difference between real life and fiction.
Wired, he's got a bomb!
Sorry, there's no bomb! What, don't shoot!
It's in video games, movies, music, cartoons, the nightly news, on the web, and even in television commercials. Violence is literally everywhere in our media today, and it's becoming harder to avoid in our society. Today, with the explosion of technology and the 24/7 media access that comes along with it, the question more than ever is, what's the actual impact, especially on our kids?
Media violence refers to how the media depicts acts of aggression and violence towards others in the media, which can be human or non-human, cartoonish or realistic.
Past studies estimate that about 90% of movies, 68% of video games, 60% of TV shows, and 15% of all music videos include some depictions of violence.
Who is watching? UNESCO Global Media Violence Study demonstrated consistency in children's viewing habits across 23 countries. 93% of school-aged children in urban or rural areas spend as much as 50% of their spare time watching television. According to the Independent Television Commission's research conducted in England in 1998, 46% of children have a television in their bedroom. Only 43% of the parents admitted to monitoring and preventing their child from watching unsuitable programs.
Kids as young as 8 are spending nearly 7.5 hours per day with media, and it's sure more time than they spend with their families or in school.
Violence on television. The results of the U.S. National Television Violence Study indicate that 61% of television programs contain some sort of violence. Only 4% of the programs contained an anti-violence theme, and realistic forms of violence were in 55% of all programs. Violence in video games. Video games raise concern of affecting children more than any other form of media. In video games, the player can take on the role of a character and carry out their violent tasks. Players can also choose their weapons and the way in which they kill the other players. Active participation in the video games can lead to learning and is often used as a teaching tool. The violence in the game is often rewarded with points or new weapons and armor. Players are encouraged to repeat the action many times until they can be done properly.
Risk factors. Violence from children and teens is often correlated with certain predictors, including neglect or abuse at home, bullying at school, and serious mental illness. However, showing your child a violent movie does not mean that they will automatically become violent. There are hundreds of factors that keep children from turning to violence.
Risk factors. Some factors include demographic factors such as parents' marital status and child's involvement in school activities. Another factor is media, whether or not the child watches violent shows, games, or movies. Negative life events also are a factor. Things such as antisocial personality, family attachment, and delinquent peers. Some other factors include family violence, whether or not they see violence in their home environment on a daily basis, and activities such as being a social child or having a social life.
What we know now, over the course of actually thousands of studies and over 40 years of research, is that in fact heavy media violence exposure, watching violence on TV, playing violent video games in particular, does cause children to be aggressive both in the short run and the long term.
Negative effects. Freshback and Tangney state that the more a program or film focuses on aggressive or violent behavior, the more likely it is to stimulate that behavior in the viewer. Aggression. Aggression can be described as a behavior that is directed towards another individual with the intent to harm them. Violence. Violence is aggression that has extreme harm as the goal. Effects were mostly seen in boys by the forms of physical aggression. Negative effects continued. In short term, media violence may encourage physical violence as well as aggressive behavior. The type of aggressive behavior in part will be based on the child's own background and circumstance. Some might get by using verbal aggression since it is more socially acceptable and is less likely to be punished. Long-term media violence exposure will help shape the child's attitude regarding violent behavior in their life and aggressive behavior. How the aggression forms in the future depends on their culture, experience, personal habits, and situational factors. Parental control. Public health recommendations for parents. Be aware of the risks that are associated with having children see violent imagery such as aggressive attitudes, antisocial behavior, and desensitization. Always review media prior to allowing the child to watch or play. Help the child understand the violent imagery according to their developmental level. Parents are also encouraged to watch films and television with their children. Conclusion. Even though research has helped to support the idea that media violence has both short and long-term effects on children, we need to remember that it is not the only factor. Factors such as history of aggressive behavior, being a victim of aggressive behavior, and exposure to violence should also be considered. More research is still needed, for example, the differences in effects based on gender or culture.
Please make sure that your child has all the facts and fully understands the responsibilities and consequences of violence and gun use.
Thank you for watching. This concludes my presentation. The following are my references.